What's going on, everybody? Wanted to jump on really quick and share my thoughts with you. I guess about a week ago, a week and a half ago, maybe, I went through a situation, very, very difficult situation. Probably the top 10, 15 most difficult situations I've ever experienced in my life. And, it was very devastating. So normally, what I would do in those types of situations, I made a decision not to do to sort of remedy the situation. I wanted to try something different, and so I turned to prayer. And most of you who know me know that I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. Have been my entire life. Some would say growing up, I was very religious. Grew up Catholic in the city of New Orleans, which has a very vibrant Catholic community. I was an altar boy. I even considered becoming a priest, a Josephite priest, up until probably ninth grade. So I grew up pretty religious, and I used to sleep with my Bible growing up in New Orleans, just because it was, man, it was so violent that I said, I need this Bible in this bed with me overnight, because you never know what could happen. I never wore the rosary around my neck because I don't know who told me, but that was always like a faux pas. You don't wear the rosary on your neck, but I certainly carried the rosary around with me for long periods of time growing up. But needless to say, I was very religious. So prayer was a big part of my life growing up, and even now. But admittedly, I wasn't sure exactly what prayer meant to me, or what place did prayer have in my life. Um, it, growing up Catholic, there were so many prayers that we had to memorize and recite, and confession. You say five Hail Marys, and that's your penance, and you go your merry way, and you're forgiven. And so prayer had this. No disrespect to Catholicism or anybody who practices it, but for me, prayer had this almost robotic um, nature to me, um, in a sense of, I know the words I'm saying, I understand what the meaning behind it is, but it never felt like prayer was something that changed my life or transformed my life. So I had this weird dynamic with prayer, but so I'm not certain why after this particular event recently I decided to turn to prayer, but I did. And what transpired was very moving for me, and which is why I'm here talking about it today. So I prayed, and something on the inside of me changed. Um, I wouldn't say that God changed, but I would say that my perception of Him changed. What does that mean? What do I mean by that? So I heard recently somebody say that prayer doesn't change God, prayer changes the person who's praying. And it's often said that God changes people from the inside out. And I can 100% attest to that, because almost every great positive change that's happened in my life started from the inside out. So, as Stephen Covey, the great author, would describe it as, it was a private victory before it was a public victory. Change happened within me before anything or anyone around me saw the manifestation of that change. Um, but this particular event and this prayer that I prayed after it, it changed me. It changed almost instantly my perception of the situation. And I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is that essentially what I learned through that scenario is that prayer changes your perception. I can't tell you how many times throughout my life uh, I prayed for a thing that didn't come to pass. And because I'm a believer in God, I wouldn't say that that made me, curse God or have less faith or, say, oh, I'm done with this God thing. It didn't do that for me. And I'm sure that for somebody else, it can and it has and it will. Um, but what this particular incident taught me was that there's so many ways to perceive a thing. And a lot of times in our desperation to see a certain thing come to pass in our life, we almost get tunnel vision. And if you're a praying person, sometimes your prayer can sound more like essentially you're telling God what He needs to do for you, and you're listening and waiting for that and that only. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but what I am saying is that true prayer, true prayer is almost an act of submission. And what I mean by that is, I think God puts desires in our hearts, and I do believe that if He does that, or when He does that, then we should pray about it. We should pray that He empowers us and emboldens us to see that thing through. I do believe in that. But oftentimes, we put the cart before the horse, and we put desires in our heart, and we create plans and so forth and so on. And then we bring those petitions to God and essentially say, here's what I want to see happen. Here's what I need you to do for me. And we look around and we look for signs and wonders and miracles that say, okay, now I see God's doing that thing for me. So I'm gonna keep moving towards that. But what true prayer should do, in my opinion and in my experience, is open you up to the possibility that what you're praying for may not be in the direct flow and or nature and or heart of God. Doesn't mean that it's evil. It doesn't mean that God doesn't want good things for you. But what prayer should do is open us up to seeing the will of God in our life and in this world. And that prayer that I prayed did just that. It opened me up to see the error in my ways and how I was viewing things. And it opened me up to see from an eagle's eye perspective. And you can visualize the eagle. You can, I'm not a what do you call it? What was Ogden? I'm not a whatever studier of birds. I forget what the word is for it, but I've read that eagles have great vision. They look like, physically, they look like they have great vision, just soaring above the earth with just stern looks on their faces. And so I imagine that from an eagle's perspective, that they see things differently than people on the earth in the particular situation. So what that prayer did for me was change my perspective. And when you change your perspective, it's almost like you're changing your position. For instance, you change your position from being in the midst of a situation, in close proximity to it, to being above the situation and seeing it from a different perspective. Changing your position changes your perspective. And ultimately, what that led to for me was submission. So this particular prayer changed my position, which changed my perspective, which led to submission. And submission, gets a very, very bad rap in so many circles. But submission is not a bad word. Submission is not a bad thing in many instances. Um, Being able to submit to something admits that there's something greater than you, whether it be an idea, whether it be a person, whether it be a cause, whatever the case may be. Submission says that I'm willing to submit my way, my will, my wants, my desires to something greater than that. It doesn't mean that your wants, will, desire, what have you, is insignificant, but it does mean that maybe there's something, a greater cause, a greater whole that is more significant at in any given instance. So that new perspective for me caused me to have a heart that was full of submission, and I could see clearly, or more clear, the error of my ways, and the submission brought about change. So it's like a pyramid. So it started with prayer, and that prayer changed my position, which changed my perspective, which led to submission. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I've been praying for a long time. I wouldn't say that I'm in, daily prayer, that every day for the last 45 years I've been on my knees praying. I wouldn't say that at all. But I'm a praying man. But this particular instance, I think I finally saw what prayer is truly meant for. And, God is not a genie in a bottle where, you rub it a certain way and, he comes up and grants 3 wishes. And, that's not how God works. The whole idea of prayer is to change you and to change your perspective. So from that place, and so many wonderful things transpire from that change, an inward change. So many tangible things transpired from that one instance. And I don't want to say, I don't want this, my experience, this particular occasion to create the false illusion that every single time you pray, there's going to be some noticeable change, inward or outward. It doesn't necessarily mean that it works like that all the time. The point of the matter is that if your prayer is in alignment with God's will, then essentially you will get in the flow, in the current, and you'll be carried away in the current of what God has already ordained since before you were a speck in your father's eye. So once you get in that flow, in that current, then things can transpire rather quickly. But that's the point of the matter is that, when you pray, if it is God's will, and your prayer is in alignment with His will, then things can manifest rather quickly. But we just have to be mindful, and that could be your prayer. That should be your prayer. What is your will for my life? What is your will for this situation? And allowing that prayer to create a heart of submission to bring you to a place of recognition that maybe what you're praying for is not in God's will. But we don't know that until we seek His will before we seek our own. As I said before, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making plans and having wants and desires and wanting to see certain things come to pass. But I can tell you so many times that I have fervently prayed for something that was not in God's will, but there was something about me in that moment that, if I'm honest, I wasn't seeking God's will. I was seeking, hey, this is what I want for me right now. I hope this is in your will, God. Please let it be in your will, but it wasn't. And how do I know it wasn't? Because it's no longer. And so with a submitted heart, with a submitted mind, I had another experience recently that kind of tied this whole thing together, and this is sort of the point, or one of the points, major points that I'm trying to illustrate, is that I'm a creative person, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, what have you. And for many years, I struggled with, again, having an idea of what I wanted my creative output to be, what medium, what style, for what audience, for how big, how small of an audience, where, list goes on and on and on. I have these concrete, rather concrete ideas about my creativity, and it takes so much work. I don't know if it's like this on any other instrument or in any other discipline or genre, but it takes so much work to try to force the trumpet. I'll use the trumpet for example, to do what you think you want it to do. The nature of the instrument, it's a very unforgiving instrument. It's not, I tell my students all the time, the trumpet is very unforgiving. It will not lie for you, but also won't lie on you. So if you're not spending time with it, if you're not treating it properly, for lack of a better phrase or lack of a better term, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do with the instrument, then the instrument's not going to lie to you, just magically work a certain way just because you wanted to. And then if it's not working because you haven't treated it the way that you should, then what we do as trumpet players is we tend to force it. Okay, I'm going to make you submit to me, and that can go on for a while. You can dominate the instrument, but after a certain amount of time, that instrument is going to rally and show you essentially that you will not dominate it. It's sort of it's a symbiotic relationship. By itself, it does nothing. It's just a piece of metal. So it needs me as much as I need it, right? But what I've discovered, and I've heard this, throughout my career, as a student and as an educator, about, um, and this goes across the board for any art form, but essentially, we're not really creating in the sense of we're pulling stuff out of thin air and making this like we're essentially, as we've all heard this analogy, like there's a big slab of marble and the statue, the sculpture is in the marble. So our job as artists is to remove what doesn't belong to reveal what is already. And so what I discovered recently in a performance was I recently had some pretty major dental work done. And as you can imagine, dental work and the trumpet are not bedfellows. They are opposite. So I knew that going into this performance that it was I was going to have to be very conscious of how I approached the instrument. And so I knew that going in. But I was in this performance and, it was going fairly well and so forth. But then the struggle started to happen. Um, the audience started to get a little bit more restless. I could feel their energy. You could hear a little bit of chatter, so forth and so on. It was an intimate venue, so any chatter or anything like that, I can hear it easily. So once that starts happening, you know, it's sort of a distraction to me as a performer. And so my tendency is to play louder, blow harder, and so forth and so on. And I did that for several minutes, and I could instantly feel several things. I could feel the pressure inside of my oral cavity building up from the dental work that I had done. I could feel my lips, my chops starting to show the fact that I had taken several days off because of the dental work. And essentially, what that spelled was that my physicality, my performance was on a downward spiral. I could feel it. I could hear it quickly. It was like, somebody let the air out of a tire. It was just so forth and so on. And so a little bit of panic starts to set in because I'm in the middle of the song, and a little bit of a panic started to set in, and something happened internally, whether it was in my mind or in my spirit or maybe a combination of both. But I decided to let that song in that moment in front of that audience be what it wanted to be and not allow my ego and my desires and so forth and so on to dictate anything. And so, how that translated in that moment was I pulled back. And I don't mean that my energy towards the instrument or my my um, my intention changed. I still wanted to sound good. I still wanted to be in service to the music and to the audience in front of me. But my ego got out of the way. And I promise you, something happened on the inside of me that translated to the outside. So pulling back, I played softer. And it wasn't like something clicked in my head and said, okay, play softer, that'll do the trick. It was just something in me said, and I believe it was a ballad. Something in me said, just pull back and just play, just play. And I played, and several things happened simultaneously. This felt better. My chops, my lips felt secure. The pressure in my oral cavity and my mouth subsided. It didn't feel like it was about to implode. And because uh, I pulled back and I wasn't forcing it so much, my horn, my trumpet resonated differently. I won't say better or worse, just resonated differently. It was without nerding out too much on music and brass, but the overtones rang out different. It just sounded better, but I think it also felt better. And the audience got down to silence, and you could hear a pin drop in there. It, it was inexplicable. But the lesson for me was get out of the way and allow what the music wanted to be, what the music wanted to say, to be at the forefront, to be in service to that, to be submitted to that. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a musician for my own ego. Maybe there were times in my life where I was, but not at this stage. I'm not, my ego is not stroked by commandeering the moment. I care more about the experience for myself, but also for the audience. And so I'm saying all that to say that that for me was a tangible picture of what prayer should be. Is there is a flow, there is a current, there is a purpose for everything under the sun. And we all play a role in that. We all have a role. And so our mindset should always be first and foremost, what is the purpose? What is the flow? What is the will of God? What is the will of God in this moment? What is the will of God? The macro, the micro, macro, the micro. What is the point? What is the purpose? What is the will? And seeking that first and foremost before everything. And allow our prayers, our requests, to be in line with that. And I promise you, things will be revealed to you. I can't guarantee how soon, how long will it take, in what manner, but aligning yourself with a greater purpose opens you up to that purpose and then you can see clearly. It may be only a step, one step, maybe several, maybe leaps and bounds. I'm not here to dictate or tell you what to specifically look for. It'll be a step. Look for that step. No, it may be a step, it may be a leap. But as it's revealed to you, now the onus is on you to be obedient. When that quiet, sweet, soft voice spoke on the inside of me and said, just pull back. That's all I heard. That was just a step. And I pulled back and I was obedient to what I heard. And I pulled back and then things opened up. And I hope that you can see those pictures that I've tried to illustrate. I hope that this video will inspire you to, if you are a praying person, to reevaluate your prayer life. And this is not a condemnation to anybody in the way that you've been praying or the way that you seek to pray. But I would just implore you to consider whether your prayer is to seek God's will first and foremost, and then act in accordance to that, or is it the other way around, that you're trying to petition God to see your will and be your personal genie and grant you 3,000 of your wishes? And I do believe wholeheartedly that if you reverse it, that if you seek His will, then things will be revealed to you and you'll be able to step into the flow, in the current. And that's what I have to say. And as a creator, how we can put all of this together is, again, be in service to the moment, be in service to the audience, be in service to being a conduit for whatever wants to be revealed in the earth for such a time as this. For such a time as this. And I say that and I repeat that because as a creator, that's really what matters. That you have been granted the gift of creativity. You have been granted the moniker of artist to produce something in the earth right now for such a time as this. And oftentimes we put so much pressure on ourselves. Oh, well, what will this mean in the future? And how will this relate to the past and where I've been and what I've done, and so forth and so on. And I'm just, as I close, I just want to implore, inspire you as a creator to recognize that all you have to do is be in service and being open to what is it that the world needs right now, and allow that to adjust some of your decisions as it pertains to your creative output. Sincerely hope that this helps you. If it does, please let me know in the comments. And I intend to do more videos like this, speaking candidly from my heart, from my experiences. My greatest endeavor, whether it be with a trumpet, whether it be through the pen, the written word, through my music, everything in my being endeavors to help you see that you can go from tragedy to triumph. That's been my life. It continues to be my life. And I sincerely hope that you allow me to help you in that regard. Thank you for listening.